Today's episode is the 12th in our series on conspiracy theories and is like something straight from a sci-fi novel. The Philadelphia experiment and the Montauk Project. Are they myth or are they legend? Did the US government really attempt to experiment with time travel? Fact or fiction? Join us as we go in deep on another wild conspiracy theory and try and find out if they really brought science fiction into the real world.
Shut up and sit down.
Hey guys, Sai. Welcome to Ace Podcast Nation. On the channel, you'll find podcasts, series, and a variety of subjects. We've got shows and series on mental health, football, films, TV, wrestling, serial killers, all sorts. We have new guests each week. We've had professional footballers, X Factor finalists, doctors, medical professionals, musicians, journalists, and many, many more. Over the coming months, we've got lots of fascinating shows coming up with podcasters, writers, MMA fighters, more ex-footballers, as well as shows on bipolar, DID, and anxiety disorders, and plus our weekly shows on conspiracy theories. We do the serial killer shows every 2 weeks, and then we have a monthly podcast on films and TV. So be sure to check them out. All the shows go video format at our YouTube channel, which is youtube.com Ace Podcast Nation, and audio versions at all the usual podcasting sites. And be sure to join the growing Ace Nation army over at facebook.com Acecast Nation. So to join me as we take a trip into the weird, paranoid world of conspiracy theories is my co-host Rhys. Welcome, Rhys. Thank you for joining me again, mate.
Hi, Si. Good to be back, mate.
Yeah, it's a weird one, mate. Today, this is going to be a bit wild. Right up my alley. This is.
It's
one of my
mental.
favourites.
It's a small conspiracy that not many people know about. Well,
There's so
loads
much
of
of
it was a true conspiracy. Loads of people know about the film and things, and loads of people have heard about the Philadelphia experiment, but they don't know the real conspiracy behind it all.
Yeah, definitely, mate. And I like the Montauk Project. I've always been interested in that one, Camp Hero. It's because it's like really weird, and there's a couple of whistleblowers supposedly from it.
I think it's much bigger than the Philadelphia one.
Yeah, I do too, because they supposedly used to experiment on kids and, all sorts of weird stuff. But we'll get into it. So we'll do the usual disclaimer just for us, make sure no one gets offended or upset by what we discuss. So before we head down the terrifying and weird road to conspiracy theories, we want to point out that just because we discuss a particular theory, it doesn't mean that we believe it to be true, agree with the point of view, or in any way think that that is how it went down. We are simply going to discuss popular theories and the evidence presented by the people who championed them. Okay, so let's start with the Philadelphia experiment, because that's, like you say, it's a bit smaller. The bulk of the show is going to be on the Montauk Project. So, Philadelphia experiment, what is it? It's basically alleged that it was a military experiment which was carried out by the US Navy in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, in October 28, 1943, where the USS Eldridge was claimed to have been rendered invisible or cloaked to enemy devices. And then there's wild stuff which supposedly happened when they did this experiment, which we'll go into in a minute. But the story first appeared in 1955, so it's 8 years later. And it was in letters of unknown origin, which was sent to a writer and an astronomer called Morris K. Jessup. And I believe he had done, he was like a UFO researcher as well. There wasn't that many UFO researchers out, around that time. But he was an astronomer by day. But he was interested in that sort of stuff. So
Can I just say, mate? Can I just say something? Wouldn't it be pretty fucking hard to be an astronomer by day?
Yeah, it would be, wouldn't it? You know what I meant. Fucking day job, isn't it? Night job. It's already the wheels are coming off early. That's all right. It's the
As
best
you were,
ones. The best,
soldier. As you were.
mate, the best shows are the ones where the wheels come off anyway, and just go on tangents about random stuff. Always
Yeah.
good. So, where was I? Fuck's sake. Oh yeah. So he received a letter. You know, don't get me wrong. If you look around and the sort of higher ups, they obviously say it's a hoax. Which, when you start going into it, it's easy to see why people wouldn't believe it, because it just doesn't conform to what are known physical laws of physics, basically, which obviously makes it very difficult for people to believe. But as we've said with all the conspiracy theories, really, is that the government technology is always like 15, 20 years ahead of what is out in the in the public and what we know about. And what we class as top secret that we know about. So like some of the jet planes and weapons that we know about, but top secret, but they're out there as well. That's sort of baby toys they are compared to what they've really got and what they can really use. Let's be honest. We know all the various experiments the US government has done on the people, the soldiers. We discussed some of them, and we'll probably discuss some more as we go through the shows. It's not a surprise that the government would try and do experiments to make things invisible, teleport them, or time travel. That's not a stretch. I don't regard that part as a conspiracy, that they were trying to achieve those things.
Loads of people have tried, haven't they? These sort of experiments. Well, look who it was who they say discovered how to hide the Eldridge. Nikola Tesla, wasn't it?
Tesla, yeah. He's balls deep in both of these.
Yeah. And I mean, he was one of the greatest minds ever. Not just of his time, ever.
Well, mate, with Tesla, there's a conspiracy theory, a big one about him, in that
loads with him, but that is one huge one.
His work got largely buried and then attributed to other people, and he just disappeared from like mainstream, whatever you want to call him, media as it would be now. But he just basically disappeared, and a lot of people believe that that's because he discovered things like free energy, which he wanted to distribute, 0 point energy or whatever, and he wanted everyone to be able to have, which obviously huge corporations and governments, they don't want that because they make a fortune for charging you for your energy.
I'm sure there's still thousands of his patents that are classified.
Oh yeah. So I think we'll probably do a show just on him.
Oh,
maybe next week. You never know.
He's a legend.
Yeah. So in this experiment, it's alleged. So the person who this letter came from is like a pseudonym, Carl M. Allen, who was Carlos Miguel Allende. And basically, he has said that he witnessed the experiment, and he claimed the secret experiment, the destroyer, or the USS Eldridge, became invisible, teleported to New York, teleported to another dimension where it encountered aliens, and then teleported through time, which resulted in deaths of sailors. And then when they came back to their original point, there was sailors fused into the walls, because obviously the thought being that to achieve this, they would have had to do something with the atoms, and at the very basic level, to teleport something, you do something with the atoms to make them either disintegrate or move, or whatever it may be.
Think
and then when they came back, people would say again.
Think Willy Wonka and Wonka Vision.
Yeah. Yeah, I suppose. Yeah.
Yeah, that's basically what they did as such, isn't it? Or
yeah, allegedly, yeah. But it's like part of the reason why I'm unsure about this. Like I believe it. They tried it, but part of the reason I don't believe, or no, I don't even say I don't believe. Part of the reason I'm a bit skeptical that it happened the way the conspiracy theory is, with them going into the future, coming back, people being fused to things. It's because they've made films about it. It's largely out there. Now, to me, if it was true, it wouldn't be, because time travel, teleportation, is like the holy grail of weapons for any government around the world. There's, nothing would be, if you've got a time travel machine, you're going to win every war. You're going to do every, you can do what you want. Same
Not
with
necessarily, though.
it's mate, isn't it? Come on. You lose him,
Avengers
back
Endgame.
time, and then do it a different way.
You
want
Avengers Endgame?
Yeah.
Yeah. How many different endings were there? How many different possibilities?
Yeah, but I'm not referring to like aliens and Thanos and people who have got like infinity.
Obviously, with time travel, we're all speculating, because whether it does exist or it doesn't, we do not know the rules of it. But the rule could well be, whatever you change in the past or whatever you alter in the future or whatever, it affects everything and every reality. And they might have thought, say they did invent time travel, they went forward and did something, even if they did it a couple of times, and each time it caused a major catastrophe and blew up in their faces, and they thought this is just way too dangerous for anyone. And they all, the big powers that be that control all governments kind of went, fucking get rid of it.
No one's allowed this sort of thing. Yeah, maybe.
We don't know how to control this to give us power yet, so get rid of it, because I don't think we ever can.
So then, playing devil's advocate to what I said, where I said I wasn't sure if it was true because it was out in the public knowledge, blah, blah, blah. They've got the capability to cloak aircraft and make them, if not invisible, completely blend in with the sky. With the plane, which we've discussed numerous times, the big black triangles, they've got that capability. That's pretty factual. If you look it up, there's research from all over the world which says that people have seen that, and I think there's a couple of like whistleblowers and people who've been involved in those projects who say, the ones who are involved in the projects will say, oh yeah, we've done it on a small scale, but we haven't managed to do it, in a big way, which is bullshit. They've got that capability.
Have you seen them things they've invented in Japan now? It's basically like, how can I explain it? A flexible TV screen, and I'm talking material flexible. You could scrunch it up in a ball.
No, I haven't seen
As long
that.
as you hold it perfectly flat and perfectly straight, there's like millions of cameras on it or whatever it is, but they show everything around it, so it's basically becomes invisible. Obviously, as soon as you move it a bit, they haven't mastered that everything moves in real time. You can see there's something.
Yeah.
But when it's perfectly straight, you can't see anything there. And that's all done, same principle as the plane, with the cameras around it and the reflecting this and whatever it might be. Imagine that material that someone could wear and move around in and be invisible.
Yeah, 100%. They've got the capability to cloak large aircrafts and the like, 100%. Which means at some point in time, they've been playing with that sort of thing. So did that begin with the Philadelphia experiment, and then they've got it? They've moved on through the years, possibly. If they traveled through time to New York, I haven't got it written down what year they were supposed to have traveled to. But they basically, was it?
Yeah.
They traveled into the future. But then, the first thing I'd be doing, if I had read that in like 1983 or whatever you said, was it 83?
I'm sure it was 83, yeah.
So, whatever year. The first thing I'd be doing is I'd be going there at that time to see if it turns up. And if it turns up, then for a fact. Oh, there we go. That was right. But equally, like you say, you don't know the rules. Could it be like not like Avengers Endgame, but in terms of like when you go through time for a forward or back, it creates just a new reality rather than altering the reality you're in. So say I went back in time and killed Hitler, or made sure Hitler never came to power, maybe that would maybe in the timeline I came from, he would still come to power and everything would still happen, but there would be another timeline where he didn't, and it was altered. Like, we don't know the rules of it because it's
or you could kill Hitler, go back to your own timeline. It's changed everything, and instead of Hitler being the one who leads Germany to war and that, someone else stepped up who was even worse and more brutal, and they won, and you
yeah,
caused it.
absolutely. Oh yeah,
That's my thinking
there's
with
so many
the time
things.
travel. If they've invented it, imagine if they did do a few things like that. You know,
Well,
imagine if 9/11 was the result of time travel, or Hiroshima, things like that. You know, major events that weren't meant to happen, but yet somebody tampered with time and they did happen.
okay, here's a theory for you. Slightly off on a tangent. What if, so like the Mandela effect, which we're going to do a show on as well,
Yeah.
but like the Mandela effect where people remember things differently, and there's loads of them. I'm not going to go into them now, but so
Yeah.
those little things or happenings, company names changing, programs, theme tunes, whatever it may be. What if those did have actually changed, where people have done something with time travel, and then the Mandela effect is actually the effects, like a what's the word, like a like a trace elements of that past timeline.
The
So
butterfly.
like, whilst the majority of the world doesn't remember before the time travel whatever was changed, but then there's just like this trace element where people think, oh, that's a bit weird, I remember it being this and that. That's I
Yeah.
think that's pretty. I think that's quite a logical way to look at those Mandela effects. That maybe there is something going on with that, and that could be the remnants of time travel. Who knows?
Maybe it's their way of kind of slowly explaining it to humankind over decades. They slip in
And
things.
you've got to remember as well, it's like,
For it, because obviously if they've already mastered time travel, you imagine 100, 200 years from now, or if they've already invented time travel, 100, 200 years from now, they'll have mastered it. Because something that big and huge, future generations are going to tamper with it when they come across it.
yeah, of course, yeah.
You
And
know,
if you think as well, what if, say, to time travel, I need certain materials to be able to do it, and then I say I thought, oh, I'll go and have a look at the future. So I go like 100 years into the future or 50 years into the future, and when I get there, there's been like a nuclear war, everything's fucked, there's nothing left, and I don't have those materials to get back. You could get stranded in the future with
yeah.
nothing. Do you know what I mean? There's so many
Or
anomalies that could happen and cause issues.
imagine if the first major rule of time travel is you can only go to the past. You can return to your present day, but you can't go forward.
I'd be happy with that, mate. If
I've
you could
never
give you
seen
like a
that as
watch
a
and
rule
just
in
say you
time
can go to
travel,
any
but
point.
I've always thought about it and thought you should be able to go back to your past. You've lived it, but the
Yeah,
future,
what if they said,
nobody should be able to see the future.
mm, yeah. So what if they, in like 20 years, you can buy like a smartwatch, and they say, right, you can go back in time, but you can only go back as far as your date of birth. If you go back further, it can cause issues or whatever. So you can go back to any point, anywhere in the world of your life. It
Yeah,
doesn't have to be when you were there, just any point during that period. So then, if that was the case, like when people jailbreak phones now and hack phones, so you can have extra stuff, or whatever.
yeah, yeah.
That would be people would be
Allegedly, people do.
jailbreaking. Allegedly, yeah, I've heard from a friend of a friend. They so like the equivalent would be people would be jailbreaking it, so you could go past your date of birth back in time, or you
Yeah,
could go feel forwards or whatever. But yeah, it's all, obviously we're going off on a bit of a tangent and we're
but what
sort
you
of going
just said,
off on it.
nail on the
But
head, mate. If someone gave you a device and said, "Look, you can go back in time, but you can only go back to when you were born," how big would the urge be to go back and see the dinosaurs, or stand on the
Sort of stuff,
Titanic?
see, wouldn't you?
You know,
Think of all like
go
the
punch Margaret Thatcher in the face. There's loads you could do.
smack her in the face hard. Yeah. So it's like it's difficult to know whether they've achieved it, because really, could they change the past, and you just wouldn't know. You just accept it. That's the way it's always been. But also, maybe like you said, when they did the Philadelphia experiment, maybe it's all true, and they all said, right, look, this is something which nobody can mess with. We need to accept it's not doable. No one should experiment with it anymore. We should just stick to weapons of mass destruction, chemical weapons, and all that useful stuff which they create, because that would kind of make sense and fit in with what they say happened, because of the things that were caused by it, and the fusing of soldiers into the walls and all
And
this sort of stuff.
the thing that ties them both in is, what was his name? There was a guy, wasn't there, whose memories kind of came back to him. He read about
Yeah, I think so. Yeah,
Al Beeslick,
that's yeah.
Al Beeslick. But that wasn't his name, was it?
No, it was like a pseudonym.
His
But
real
yeah, I know the guy you mean.
Frank,
I haven't got it
Cannon
written
or
down at
something,
the
and he
moment.
had a brother, Duncan Cannon. But when basically the gist of it was, when his memories came back, he remembered him and his brother being in their 20s working on the Philadelphia experiment.
Mm.
They went forward in time and ended up in Montauk 1983, but them two apparently jumped off.
All
Yeah,
right, so they stayed in the future, sort of
they
thing.
stayed there. The Eldridge came back, bodies were fused, etc. So back in that time, who knows what happened? But these two brothers, they were given the task to go back in time through this wormhole, whatever had been created, and destroy everything to do with the Philadelphia experiment.
All right, okay.
Which also leads into the Tulsa conspiracy. They were ordered to kill anyone who had anything to do with this, etc. So all these conspiracies tie in with each other. But
Yeah. Oh,
that's
yeah.
the major one is this guy Al Beeslick. He was, I think, in 1983 he was at age 57, but
Yeah, Al Bielek.
he
Yeah,
should
I
have
got him.
been in his 70s or something like that. They'd like stopped him aging so fast. He travelled through time a few times. Blah blah blah. But he's the only person I've ever heard anything said or wrote about who has
Yeah,
said
sort of
it.
concrete said, I was there.
Yeah,
Right, here you go.
nothing about his brother, nothing from his brother, but apparently it was him and his brother Duncan. And I'm sure his name was, it was Frank and Duncan Cannon.
Okay, so Al Bielek, he claims to have been at the center of the Philadelphia experiment, which is one of the most controversial conspiracy theories. And it says Nikola Tesla and Einstein and others were all involved in an attempt initially to make the ship invisible. But obviously there was the time travel and the dimensional stuff. Bielek claims that the answer to all these questions in terms of what they were trying to achieve, so invisible, different dimension, travel to the future, he said all yes, they were trying to do all of those things. He also provided details on what he says worked and what went wrong. Obviously he did speak in, and he lived till about 84. And he did interviews and he did speaking. He had a radio show on that Coast to Coast. So I'm just trying to find some of the stuff that he said. It doesn't go into it on this particular thing. Yeah, so we'll have to circle back to him, I think, because I can't. I was hoping I could just quickly pull up the full story of Al Bielek. There you go. Yeah, and I mean, so obviously the accounts and the different things have changed over the years. And you know, there's as with all these conspiracy theories, there's plenty of people trying to, you know, debunk them, say that it's bullshit, and you know, they're never going to come out and say, oh yeah, it's just completely right. So, like according to some accounts, researchers thought that the version of where there was like a large electrical generators to bend light around the ship, so that the ship would be invisible. The Navy regarded that as like having real military value for obvious reasons, so they sponsored the experiment, if you like. Um, but it was caused a lot of issues supposedly around the gravity of the ship, because of the things they were trying to sort of mess around with and this, that, and the other. So like there's a website called Al Bielek Debunked, and it's a whole website which goes into like his past, his statements, his scientists, his family albums, you know, everything. Far too much for me to go into now. We could do a whole show on him by the looks of it, because it's literally pages and pages of people trying to debunk what he says, going through what he says. So maybe we'll circle back and we'll do a part 2 for this show with just on him, because yeah, there's a lot to go into on that.
Yeah.
Okay. Look, as with a lot of these conspiracy theories, there's no real way for us to say this definitely happened. I believe that they were trying to do it. Do I believe that they achieved it? I'm not 100% sure. Wouldn't surprise me if they did, and then they decided to sort of back off from it because of, you know, if it happens as the conspiracy theory is, that there was people fused to the decks. And I remember watching a documentary, and there was a guy saying like there was like an arm coming out of the ship, or a head in the ship, like in the wall, which, you know, you can't. If you saw that, if you were on that ship as a researcher or as part of the crew, and that happened to you, where the ship is shaking and moving and like something's going on, even if you just feel like the ship is just vibrating intensely, and then you sort of, when it stops shaking, you go around the ship and there's people fused into walls and stuff, that's going to be quite distressing. And I just think someone from the research team or the crew would have spoken out and said, look, this did happen. But then all these researchers over the years, is that where they're getting their research from, where they're speaking to these people, but the people are too scared to go on the record and give their names for their own safety? So that's why there's, you know, same as anything, isn't it? With like journalism or research, if people fear for their safety, they don't want to put their name out there, which then provides the people who are trying to debunk it, they can say, well, you haven't got anyone who was there. You haven't got like a witness, but you could have a witness, but they just don't want to be named. So it sort of, they almost cancel each other out in a way.
I just don't know.
It's hard, isn't it? Because, so it's like, say, for instance, say like you were a crew member and you were there on the ship and it happened like they say it happened. But you know, if you speak out, they're going to kill you, kill your family, whatever, usual stuff. And then these researchers keep contacting you and you want to get your story out, but you don't want to put your name out there because that's going to cause issues for you and your family, blah, blah. So you do it off the record. The researchers put the information out there, which they have. But then the people who are debunking it are saying, well, you've got no witnesses. And it's like, you're at like this impasse where you can't, like one side is not going to reveal their sources and the other side is not going to accept it because you haven't got a legitimate witness, if you like. It's a weird one, isn't it?
Yeah. It's. Would you want to be that person who come forward and spoke?
No, I don't think I would. Like, I
Even
think
if
in
there
my
was stuff wrong with you.
20s, before I had kids, I think my answer to your question would be, yeah, fuck yeah, I would do it just to expose it and do it and this and that. But
Right, but
like,
you say that now.
now I
Work
got kids and stuff.
the people who
I,
worked on this experiment, they would have seen how dodgy and shady the government is.
yeah, they know exactly what they're capable of and how much they do not care about human life, the human life of their own soldiers,
Yeah,
and let alone families and civilians. They've even they've proved that by the wars they've gone into and the things they've done, like the syphilis experiments and the LSD experiments. Governments have proven time and time again that they do not give a shit about Joe Public, and they do not give a shit about individual soldiers. They're just ants in their game. So yeah, you're not going to, it would take someone high up to come out and say, no, this is what happened, as opposed to like a crew member or like a foot soldier type thing. But then even then, I think they'd be in just as much danger. So you've got the same, it's like a vicious circle, isn't it?
totally, man. It's
So
there'll never be enough people come forward for it to be believable anyway.
yeah, I think it would take like solid evidence rather than witnesses.
Yeah, and what
Because when people
until
are,
time travel is known, there'll never be evidence.
I think these days, if they were doing it now, I think they'd be more likely to become evidence because there's so many ways to leak things. And obviously, you can get like recording devices the size of a pin and this, that, and the other. So, like, the ability to expose it is larger than what it was then. But equally, it's like I think they go to more extremes now to keep people quiet, and they also footage can be faked, and as the technology to expose it has got greater, the technology to fake it has got greater as well. Which well, like we said about flying saucers and all this sort of stuff, is very difficult to differentiate between the two. And then when you add in the technology that the government's got, and could it just be a government planes and aircraft? This adds another wing to it, as it were. Okay, so let's move on to the Montauk Project, one of my favourite conspiracies. Very interesting again. It's got a huge bit of sci-fi edge to it. It's one of the oldest conspiracy theories going as well. It's so the premise is that the Montauk Airfield Force Base, or Camp Hero as it was called, was on right at the far end of Long Island, New York. The theory is that the government created some kind of interdimensional portal, sort of like not a Stargate, but like basically the gist of or a big part of the project is they had these things called the Montauk chairs, where they would set kids in there because the kids were more what's the word, more likely for it to work because of the way their brain makeup, and it's easier to break through, or whatever you want to say. And they would sit in these special chairs with things linked up to their brains, and they could travel to different dimensions. They could travel back in time. So it was like a series of secret US government projects conducted at Camp Hero, for the purpose of developing psychological warfare techniques, exotic research including time travel, mind control, and the like. It originated from there was a series of books called the Montauk Project, which the guy said afterwards were fiction, but when they were marketed and when they were brought out, he said they were like exposing the truth. And years later, and I think even today, he sort of hints at the fact that they're not fiction, they're truth, but they were marketed in a way because obvious reasons. So the stories from there, they started to circulate in the early 80s. According to a UFO researcher, Jack Vallée, the Montauk experiments seem to have originated with the writer Preston Nichols, who claimed to have recovered repressed memories of his own involvement when he was a child, claims that he was periodically abducted to continue his participation against his will. And like this guy he is not uh, like a poor guy who's like got like psychiatric problems and isn't, he's not got a job and all this sort of stuff. He's a really intelligent guy. He's got a load of degrees in like electrical engineering, psychology, parapsychology. He's authored a load of books. So he's not like, he doesn't need the money. I suppose you could say he needs the attention, I guess. But he also, he's a very intelligent guy. And he claims that they achieved such things as time travel, teleportation, mind control, contact with alien life, as well as staged fake moon landings. He also framed developments which followed. He said this all followed on from the Philadelphia experiment. And he says that when they jumped to 1983 in the Philadelphia experiment, they ripped a hole in space-time, allowed them to like manipulate it. So before we go to one of the whistleblower guys who said he was one of the kids, or another one of them, what do you think of that so far, mate?
From both of these, the only line I really follow is that Al Bielek one and where he went with it. The rest of it, I think a lot of it has been added on now. I totally 100% believe the experiments on the kids and everything like that. But the rest of it, I think
what they achieved and stuff.
I think people have jazzed it up too much when it didn't need to be.
So I watched when I watched the first time I became aware of this one was when I was watching Jesse Ventura Conspiracy Theories, and they were on about it. And they interviewed this guy called Andrew Basiago, who's like a lawyer. Again, intelligent guy. Said that when he was he was part of a side project called Project Pegasus, which was to do with secrets of teleportation and time travel for the benefit of mankind. So it was all part of DARPA as well. And he said about the chair. So he says in his story is he was a child participant in this top secret DARPA program, experimenting with time travel and teleportation in the early 70s. These technologies were created by Nikola Tesla. He said he experienced 8 different time travel technologies during his stint in the program. Mostly, he said, his travel involved a teleporter based on technical papers supposedly found in pioneering Nikola Tesla, blah, blah. And apparently they found the paperwork for all this equipment in Nikola Tesla's apartment after his death, which, that goes into that again about his work being stolen, maybe. He says the machine consisted of 2 grey elliptical booms about 8 feet tall, separated by 10 feet, between which a shimmering curtain of what Tesla called radiant energy was broadcast. And Andrew Basiago says that the radiant energy is a form of energy that Tesla discovered is latent and pervasive in the universe and has among its properties the capacity to bend space-time. He said the project participants would jump through this field of radiant energy into a vortal tunnel, and when the tunnel closed, they would find themselves at a different destination. So his description of it, he said, one felt as if one was moving at great speed or not moving at all, as the universe was wrapped around one. So basically, as the universe bent to where they wanted to go back in time. That's what it felt like. So this guy goes into great detail about not just doing it, but the kind of like the technology behind it. Now, I don't know if any of that technology exists, if it's real, if it works, blah, blah, I don't know that. So like either this guy has got one hell of a imagination to think up all this stuff and to go into this much detail and to repeat the same story over the years, and whether he's just talked himself into it, because obviously memories can be manipulated either by the person themselves, but if they tell themselves something enough they believe it, or by other people. So he also claims he was seen in a photograph at Abraham Lincoln at Gettysburg. There's like a famous photo in 1863, which he said in 1972 he was shot back via a plasma containment chamber, which was located in East Hanover, New Jersey. They dressed him in period clothing as a Union bugle boy. He went back as he was doing his speech, and he says, and he points himself out in this image. I might attach the image to the video, actually put it in the description. It's just like a boy. There's no way to tell if it's him, but he says it's him, and I think he like tries to say, but yeah, there's no way to identify him. He said he did not witness the assassination, however, he heard the shot. And then he goes in, there's loads of details and different things he says. And he also says, which I kind of would believe, I don't know if that's the right word. He says that we've been to Mars, and they've actually got a really quick way to get to Mars. There's bases on Mars. Like he's quite well known for that as well, saying that they've got like a really quick way to just go to Mars instantly, which is linked to this sort of time travel technology which they've got. What do you think about bases on the Mars, mate?
I don't know. That's one of them things that one day I could read something and go, yeah, I think there is, and then one day I could be like, no, that can't be.
Yeah, it's weird, isn't it? It's like, wouldn't surprise me. Wouldn't surprise me at all if they did. But equally, the thing which gets me with this guy, and it struck me when they interviewed him on the Jesse Ventura show, is the amount of detail he's got. And like, he doesn't just say, this is how we went in time. He says, we were using this at first, and then it sort of, as technology changed, we started using this type of machine. He goes into like proper details. But then I try and think back to my childhood, and I can barely remember getting any of it. But yeah, this guy supposedly remembers all these encounters. However, they say the kids remember traumatic events like really clearly. So maybe that's why, because obviously, I suppose if you were shot back in time, you might remember.
No.
Not having it at all, are you?
No.
Yeah, not. It's just, I find it really interesting, but I just can't quite get on board with it, I think is the best way to say. Like I say, he's got all sorts of claims, and he ran for president as well in 2016. But he travels to Mars. He claims to have teleported to Mars in the 1980s as an Earth ambassador to the Martian civilization. This is strange because when he published this article nearly 3 decades later, he claims to have been astonished to discover life on Mars, along with William B. Stillings, a comrade that he dug up somewhere. Basiago now claims that President Obama was a fellow Mars traveler back in the day when living under the moniker Barry Sohuto, is it? Yeah, Sotoro, Sohuto, I'm not sure about that. But he said the fact that Barack Obama used to go back may be the only truth in Basiago's claims, because Basiago and Stillings say they met Obama on Mars, and the government is now covering up the president's space travel past. So yeah, that's where he starts to lose me completely. Where it's like, do you know what he reminds me of when I read it all through? It starts off maybe he was experimented on as a kid, and something happened. It was quite traumatic. Not sure what. And then as he's told his story and more people have listened, he's thought, oh, I'm going to exaggerate this. And then more and more people come, and more people want to hear his story and speak to him. So then the story grows and grows and grows and grows. So it starts off as like experiments, then it's time travel and teleportation, and then this, and then it's, oh, I went to Mars, and I went, do you know what I mean? It like just grows and grows and grows because he's getting so much attention of researchers, conspiracy theorists, documentary makers, whatever it may be. And even today, he still gets a lot of attention. He's got a successful career as a journalist and a lawyer, and a lot of that success has come from his stories of being a time traveling child.
Yeah. You hear loads of that, don't you? Of like regressive memories and things coming out, and children describing things from the past, and that I can buy into. Whether it's time travel or something to do with the soul, I don't know, mate, because I'm a believer we've all got a soul or an energy of some kind. And when we die, it's got to go somewhere. And there's never even been a hint of, of a collection of where they are or anything like that. So is our souls, is it just us living over and over and over again? And it's the soul that's in charge. It says, oh, this time let's try, I don't know, let's try being a cat. You're a girl.
Yeah.
You just don't know.
What I think is most likely for him particularly, maybe for some of the other kids and people who've come forward, is that I believe they probably experimented on as kids, because it was to do with their family members being involved in DARPA experiments, like as researchers and whatever. So I believe that they used those kids for, whether it's Camp Hero or DARPA or whatever. I believe that they used those kids and they experimented on them. But I wonder whether it's more they experimented on them from a mind control point of view and messing with their memories. And maybe they planted like this type of memory in their head to see how extreme they could manipulate the human mind. Like, what could they make them believe happened so that they believe it with every ounce of their being? Like, how much, how extreme could they just plant something in their mind and make them believe it? So I kind of don't know about that, whether they did the memory implanted. I'm not saying that, but what I'm saying is I believe that they were probably took part in experiments or were forced to experiments, and it was probably more likely to do with mind control rather than him traveling through time, I think. So lastly on this bit, there's an interview with this woman called Eve Frances Logan. It's like a Scandinavian name. And Andy Pero. They shared their experience with trauma-based control of the mind and the Montauk explorations in consciousness, which goes to what you were saying about the soul and stuff. And he recalled sessions where he was tortured and put through shock treatments, and it was done to have the ability to reprogram the participants to do things that they were not able to previously do. And they say there was, in their stories, there's like cages of chicken wire fencing with women and children screaming for help. And according to a lot of the conspiracy theories, the mind control facilities, which were located all over America, in Rochester and New York and New Jersey, Atlanta and stuff, the Air Force bases, this guy said that the mind control tactics used were very similar to the previous mind control experiments, which, facts which have been declassified now. And it included doing excessive exercise. But why that interests me, or why I lean towards they perhaps were doing experiments of mind control with the kids, is when they've shown that they'll do it, and that's a proven fact. It's been declassified that they did mind control experiments on people. Secondly, they tried to break people to create another personality so they could do like the Manchurian Candidate type thing, where they've got two personalities and the one is going to be an assassin, but the main personality knows nothing about it, which is obviously, that's one hell of a stealth soldier or assassin to have. And what they do is they would just completely break them. They would torture them. They wouldn't let them sleep. They would play music really loud, but wouldn't let them sleep. They'd excessive exercise. And that kind of fits in with the stuff that these people describe. And what they do then is they try, and when they've got them in like the psychological state they want them to, they would test them to see if they could do things that they couldn't do before. So like this guy said that once he had been mind controlled, if you like, he was able to lift a 545-pound barbell, or there was people being able to lift like 4 or 5 times what they could normally lift, because they'd altered something within their brain chemistry or their psychological state. And I think as we finish off on this now, because we're finishing on mind control, I think in the next show maybe we go into the MK Ultra and go down the mind control route. What do you reckon?
Yeah, totally.
Do you think it's more likely that they were doing mind control experiments on those kids rather than like time travel experiments and stuff like that?
Yeah, I don't think it was so much time travel experiments, but God knows what they were doing to them poor kids, mate.
Yeah, don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they haven't tried to do time travel experiments or teleportation experiments. I guarantee you they have.
Oh, yeah,
But,
guaranteed.
like what these people are, well, this guy particularly, but what people are saying is that they succeeded and he went and did all these things in the past and went to Gettysburg, and like his story, like I said, it seems to have like grown and grown and grown and grown and grown, and he seems to add a bit more on each year of like something else which he did or something else which he's remembering. Maybe he's just got regressed memories, and the more as the years go by, he's just remembering more stuff. I'm not saying the guy's lying either. I'm saying I'm not sure if I believe that it happened the way he's saying or the way he remembers it. But just because he remembers it like that doesn't mean that he doesn't believe it. Do you know what I mean?
We've all had deja vu, haven't we?
Oh, yeah.
And it's like you say, that Mandela effect, how people remember different things. There's gotta be a reason to it. Like you say, one of the most simplest explanation is usually the right one. And as crazy as it sounds, the most simplest explanation is time travel. Someone's changed time.
Yeah.
So, you know,
And I got to say,
theory, you know, the simplest is usually right, even though it's a crazy out there one. What other theory is there to the Mandela effect that is simple?
the only other reason that I can see for the Mandela effect, if it is as people think it is the things which make sense to me is time travel and something's changed and this like trace elements of the previous timeline, or it all sort of started when they started firing up the CERN particle accelerator, and it's something to do with that, and then messing with black holes and smashing parts of the universe together and all this crazy shit, which stuff which they just don't understand. And they openly say, yes, we understand kind of what we're doing, but we don't understand what's going to happen. And, you know, to me, that's like a worrying thing because they're doing stuff with black holes. But they're the only two things that I can make sense of. If things are changing from when people are younger to now, that's the only thing which makes sense. If they are changing, it could just be people misremembering. You know, the human brain is a complex thing. Maybe people just remember it differently. But I guarantee you, mate, if you when we finish this now, if you go and look at a YouTube video with all the different Mandela effects that people have found, I guarantee you there'll be at least 5 which you'll be like, hang on a minute, that's not right. Like the one which got me looking into it was at the end of Queen, We Are the Champions. And it says, we are the champions. And it finishes with, of the world. But it doesn't. Now, that was, when I heard that, I was like, no, it does. And then you look it up, and it doesn't. So, what's that? Did I just make that up? But it's not just me. It's like thousands and millions of other people. So it's like...
There's no explanation to that one. Maybe it was like...
a live version, maybe. But like that's not just, you know, do you know what I mean? That's not just like me and you're a bit like, oh, I don't know. It's like everyone remembers that end to that song.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. And it's like, well, what's going on?
Do you know what I'm blaming? The Mighty Ducks.
Yeah.
On that film, they sing it, don't they, around that campfire, and that's the way they sing it. So
that's what it is. Everyone just thinks that because they sang it like that. That's what it is.
Watched that film, we started singing it like that, and then the rest of the world followed on. So, Mighty Ducks, your fault.
Yeah, not so sure about that. So, mate, do we do next week MK Ultra or the Mandela Effect? I'll let you choose.
The Mandela Effect. We got to follow this on now.
Good choice. I will. Yeah. Well, we'll do Mandela Effect next week, and then we'll do MK Ultra the week after. So, guys, as always, it's been a fun and weird and wonderful show. You can find Rhys on Twitter at Short Celtic. You can find us at acecast_nation. Join the Ace Nation Army at facebook.com/acecastnation. If you send us a tweet or a comment using the hashtags QFQ for quickfire question or Ace Nation Army, we will read your comments out on air, and you can ask questions quicker because we'll see them. I've got some amazing shows and guests lined up over the recording over the next couple of weeks. I'm not going to name them yet because I don't want to jinx it, but like Rhys knows some of them, and if I can pull some of them off, it'll be a really exciting time.
Mate, you should not say if I could pull some of them off, it'll be a really exciting time.
Yeah.
Just because you might enjoy it, I don't think they will.
Yeah, someone could clip that, couldn't they? And just have that little clip out there. As we record this today on podcast.co, we are the podcast of the day, which is pretty cool. And things are looking up. We're just trying to build one viewer, one listener at a time, doing loads of shows on loads of different shit. It's all good fun. Videos at youtube.com/Ace Podcast Nation. Audio, Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Stitcher, Acast, TuneIn Radio, pod.co/Ace Podcast Nation. We got loads of brand new shows, loads of brand new guests, brand new week, every week, brand new shows, Monday, Wednesday, Friday. Plus, there's a couple of video segments which are social media exclusive, usually found on Facebook. Send us your suggestions, comments, abuse, like, share, subscribe. Tell us what you want. Tell us what you want us to discuss. Tell us who you want on, and get involved. Anything to add, Rhys?
Nothing for now, mate. Just look forward to next week and me and Mandela.
Wicked. So until next time, we will leave the bizarre world of conspiracies alone, and we'll move on to something different. Until next time, we will see you later.
Shut
Ciao
up
for now.
and sit down.